All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast at Tomboy Official. So, another topic that I wanted to touch on today, also from something that they kind of mentioned in passing in kind of terminology and phrasing on the Bad Queers podcast. There was, first of all, I need to write more neatly. Second of all, I'm kind of usually writing notes of the topics that I want to kind of delve into. So when they mention things, when I'm listening to these podcasts during work, then like I'm documenting, I'm writing stuff, I'm like, and then I hear something that sounds like, oh, that sounds like something, and then they mention it and then they don't maybe expand. Like they expand on it a little bit, but I feel like I'd like to expand on it way more because they usually go through like multiple topics. And I'm like, well, certain of those topics, I'd really like to break them down. So one of them was about gender and intimacy. I think that's where the podcast started, was talking about intimacy in general and kind of how a lot of people assume that intimacy is like a physical, sexual intimacy, but there's also all these other different levels that aren't just physical touching. And then even with sexual intimacy and sex and stuff like that, it's not just a whole like clear-cut thing. Like even if you have people defining sex, usually a lot of us were taught, I talked a little bit about in another episode about like heteronormative standards, and a lot of our ideas develop from these heteronormative standards because a lot of us were born to heterosexual parents. Not everybody, but a lot of us were. And so I think we're gonna see things differently too in a few years, when a lot of the Gen Z and a lot of millennials or younger millennials even start having children. Because a lot of us are kind of more out and proud types of people, or even if we're not out and proud, we at least are kind of like, okay, maybe I'm not fully out, but I'll still like experiment a little bit with stuff and like do what's comfortable for me and safe for me in my environment, versus before when people were really kind of like in a dangerous environment and couldn't really experiment without too much. Like, I'm not saying there's no risk. I mean, I live in Southern California, so I feel like my view and my lifestyle is quite skewed, because I can be openly who I am. I do work at a site where I can be more open with, different things, even though it's not always comfortable and there's not always the understanding. And yes, there is definitely prejudice and discrimination that happens. But I feel like overall, people's life's goals aren't to discriminate at my job. It's not like their main focus is to like make everybody feel like shit. I think that people I think they want to mean well. That's really what I feel and think. But anyways, I'm not here to really talk too much about that. Because there's definitely discrimination, but I think there's also just like it also comes from a place of ignorance, and it also comes from a place of I've never felt like everybody didn't care about me. I'll put it that way. I've never felt like there's nobody here that I trust. There's nobody here that I can confide in. There's nobody here that like understands me or listens or at least tries to get along with me. And everybody's just discriminating against me left or right. Like, I think I've faced discrimination. Most of it has been mild and minor enough that I just like, whatever the fuck, just whatever. Like, it's just like I just brush it under the rug and leave it alone. And it's not only by cis straight people. I've been discriminated against by lesbian women as well. So I don't even want to, y'all know who you are. So I'm not even gonna like go into that. But I mean, anyways, so the topic that I was trying to get into, so gender and intimacy, and some things that come up with that are things like femininity gets mentioned, masculinity gets mentioned. A lot of times you don't really hear too much about the full gender spectrum. It's usually When we talk about gender and intimacy, a lot of times we talk about the emotional intimacy, people sharing their emotions and feelings and things, or the sexual intimacy, or just like the trust levels involving intimacy and like deeper conversations with people about personal topics and sharing secrets and things like that. Like, there's more to intimacy than that, but I mean, just generally that's kind of what people are talking about or what they think of. And it's kind of hard to kind of look at terminology a lot, because a lot of times it's hard to really talk about things from like what it actually means, and scientifically what it actually means, and what it would what it would mean if you looked it up in a dictionary, and what it means in psychology versus what it means in, you know, another field where people are talking to one another or whatever, versus how people actually, like, you know, how a layperson uses the word. And so it's like sometimes it's hard to really talk about different topics when it's like, okay, like when I say this, I know what I mean, but then does the other person think that that's what I'm saying? Like, if your partner came to you and was like, we're having intimacy issues, I mean, that can mean anything, right? Like, some people would be like, oh, like there's something wrong with the sex, and other people would be like, I know, because I don't ever talk about my feelings. And it's kind of like, how do you know what somebody else's definition is unless they kind of expand on it more? So even just saying gender and then saying intimacy, those two things in and of themselves are already like setting the stage for needing a lot of explanation. Because when you talk about gender and intimacy, and then automatically when people start going into masculine types of things that you see and feminine types of things that you see, then there's this whole other part of the spectrum that gets totally left out of these conversations all the time. Because there are other people out there that are different than, you know, they may not be fully on the masc side or fully on the femme side, or identifying as male or identifying as female, or they might identify one way and not present, you know, they might present in a different kind of way too. So the reason why I say all that, and I hope it wasn't too confusing, because I think sometimes I even confuse myself, when it comes to the gender related things, there's also like not only just the differences, but there's also commonalities that the genders have with one another. And then I have to turn on my light because I can't really see. So yeah, commonalities across gender experiences, like how we were socialized, if you're socialized in a masc or feminine socialization kind of style, and how this ties into social stressors and expectations of society, such as your peers or people you date or your family. This is complex, right? You can see how complex it is. I mean, I know people see it as complex. I'm not saying I'm the only one that sees it, but I kind of like to talk more about the middle of the spectrum, because that's the part that gets left out the most. So even if we talk about, for example, something as simple as gender and intimacy, or even like if you're interested, I think I've mentioned this to quite a few friends. It's like, say if you're interested, or maybe you don't know this, maybe you do. If you're interested in people in the kind of mid-gender spectrum, if you're interested in trans people, like I'm talking about if this is like your sexual attraction, or if you get crushes on them and things like that, or if you're interested in like non-binary people, and then if you go online and you're like, I'm going to Google this and I want to watch some X-rated movie about this, or some X-rated streaming video or whatever, and you go online and you're like, I can't tell you to look for it and see what you're gonna find. I can't promote. I can't tell you to do it, but if you're of age and that kind of experiment interests you, see what you find. Because you might be surprised if you've never looked it up before. You're gonna see certain things. Same thing with ethnicity, and I know this isn't really where I'm throwing it in, but it's almost similar to when you look up ethnicities, whenever you see black guys, it's always going to be big black cock. Or whenever you see women, it's like ebony woman with big tits or whatever. Like, you always see these kind of common themes. And whenever you look at trans themes, a lot of times you do see trans women who, I'm not hating on it. I'm just saying, a lot of times what you see are trans women who still have, who have never had, like, any type of a bottom surgery. Which is fine. I mean, not everybody needs one, but I'm just saying, these are kind of like the fetishy type things that you find. And a lot of these things, when we didn't really talk about this too much with the heteronormative standards, but a lot of these things are geared towards heteronormative fetishes. Not every hetero person has those fetishes, but it's like heteronormative fetishes. I don't know how else to describe it. It's based on the majority culture's interests, fetish interests, right? So you don't often find a lot of trans males in pornography. You don't often find a lot of non-binary people in pornography. You don't often find a lot of masculine presenting females in pornography. You don't often find a lot of people of color that aren't being fetishized for different sorts of large genitalia or something like that. You don't usually see that in pornography with just like, oh, it just happens to be an Asian, or just happens to be like a black guy or a black woman or whatever. You don't just happen to see it without like a fetish attached to it. You don't just happen to see like larger sized, plus size people in pornography. And that's when you take it to like the companies that are like professional. If you look at like amateur stuff, you might find a little more amateur stuff. You might find a little more polished stuff out there. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for certain stuff, you're going to be searching for a bit. I'm telling you, like, it's not like easy to find. And porn is not hard to find, guys. It's not like hard. Like, you can find porn without even looking for it. It just, you type in something that you thought you typed in, and like next thing you look and it's like, oh, this is what? Like, that's not what I was necessarily looking for. But I mean, it shows up, right? So however people feel about adult entertainment and things like that, that's your thing. Like, I'm not here to tell people to do things that make them uncomfortable. I know some people aren't comfortable with it. If you're underage, don't do things that you shouldn't be doing. If you're older than a certain age, you shouldn't be looking at people who are younger than 18 years old. Just keep it legal, guys. Keep it safe. Keep it just please. But the reason why I mentioned that is because, I mean, not everything's a stressor, but it can be a stressor, right? So gender and intimacy can already be a bit of, there are already going to be topics that come up in that category. We can talk about stereotypes all day. I mean, like I've mentioned, I hang out with guys a lot, so I know that a lot of stereotypes about men and problems with intimacy and all these kind of things, like that they're not emotionally available and that kind of stuff. I find guys to be very emotionally available, sometimes almost more so than females that I know. A lot of the females I know, actually, not all of them, but a lot of them do tend to be a little more kind of more like dominant presenting, kind of like, not super sensitive about things. A lot of the guys I know are very sensitive people and very emotionally available, but also it might be the dynamic I have with them, because like, I don't come at people in like a certain kind of way too. I think a lot of times like femme people, I've noticed this about some like cisgender straight females. Sometimes when I see them interacting with guys, I'm just like, you're a little bit like aggressive and like, it's assertive, but like in a way that they're trying not to be like dominated. They're kind of trying to make it known that like you can't have a dominant presence with me. And I feel like in a lot of ways that can kind of push males to not be emotionally want to be open when you have somebody who's like kind of like asserting like authority over you. It's like, I think guys don't feel safe in spaces like that where it's like you have this like, and it's not coming from a loving place. I'm saying like it, like when it's coming from a place of like, I'm being sarcastic and trying to like assert this dominance over you, I think that makes guys kind of like, oh, like this doesn't feel safe for me to be like vulnerable in this kind of space. And I've noticed that, I'm not saying, I don't know how much percentage, but maybe it's just the females I know. I've seen a lot of hetero cis females treating hetero cis guys, males, that way. And then they're like, oh, he's never like emotionally open with me. I'm like, well, I'm not either, like, because of the way you are, you know, and I'm not even a male, and I'm not a hetero cis male. So it's like, I could understand why some guys would maybe not be emotionally open. But a lot of the guys I know, I mean, we have a lot of deep emotional conversations. So I don't really know how common that is. It might just be the guys that I know. I do work in psychology, so there is kind of that. There is like the, you know, common practice of, you know, talking about our feelings and things. It's not like out of the norm where if somebody's like, hey, I've been going through it, I just want to talk to somebody about something, or like, can you lend an ear or whatever. Like, I don't feel like that's like abnormal, but in some social circles it might be. In some social circles it might be an issue. Yeah, so when it comes to femininity and masculinity, that is kind of something that you see regardless of gender. You can have a feminine or masculine or somewhere in between, or even kind of switching between different sides or different parts of the spectrum. I'd say for me that's kind of true. Like, I would say I kind of have more feminine traits in certain environments, maybe more masculine traits in others. But I wouldn't say I'm clear cut all the time, one or another. Like, I think it would take a very long explanation for me to kind of go through every aspect of my life in different scenarios of how I might present or act more feminine versus more masculine versus somewhere in the middle. I tend to fall like a lot in the middle and then just kind of waver a little bit towards masc and femme, like here and there. But I'm rarely full on the spectrum one end or the other. I'm usually like right up in the middle, just chilling. But yeah, when it comes to femininity and masculinity, there definitely are commonalities across both sides when it comes to like intimacy and gender expression. Like, another part of gender expression is definitely like in your intimate relationships with people, and it doesn't mean it has to be a partner or somebody that you're dating or somebody that you're fucking or some, like, it could be just like your buddy or your neighbor or your roommate or whatever. There can still be a level of intimacy there. And then when it talks about like how you were socialized, if you've had like a masculine or feminine socialization, that can kind of play a role too. Some people, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I know some people who, you know, they're males, heterosexual males who grew up like maybe more with like a lot of sisters, or whatever it may be, you know, like some people have like a good understanding of women, even if they're not women, or whatever, you know, like, but I don't really know if that's really, here or there, you know, like socialization, I think like you can be kind of told what to wear and told how to dress and how to act. I think when you're a little younger, I mean, you can get away with certain things that you couldn't get away with when you were older. Again, the rules are different for males and females. So like a lot of times females can get away with being tomboyish, but a lot of times guys kind of are going to get a little more ridiculed by friends and family and people if they're kind of like a little more feminine. Um, um, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that's kind of what I've noticed. I mean, I used to work at a school too, with kids, and I kind of noticed that too. That like, yeah, a girl could do, a girl could come to school in a tie, and that's not really a big issue. But I saw a little boy, like wearing some kind of wig that I don't know where he got it or what, but he was like wearing a wig, and the teacher got so mad at him. She didn't yell at him, but she like took him aside and was like, talking about like his feminine thing that he was doing. And I've mentioned this before, that I had a teacher that, we had slave day that turned into indentured servant day, because people were like, I'm not comfortable with like the slave terminology, especially when, some of the students were black, and then they were like auctioning them. Like it wasn't meant to be like, it was part of like school spirit week, and one of the days was slave day, but it wasn't like about black people being slaves. Let's get that clear. It was like it was like a fundraiser for the school kind of thing, where it's like, okay, like it was usually like girls who were crushing on some older guy that were like, I want to pay him to carry my books and to like buy my lunch or to clean my locker or whatever, like, and some of the students happened to be black. And I know some of the parents of some of those students heard it and were like, I'm not comfortable with this being called slave day, which makes sense, because then you have a guy who's like a black student who's up there when they're starting the auction, and it's kind of like, this doesn't really feel right. But I mean, it was just part of the spirit week, and they did change the name, and it was never meant to be a racially charged thing. But I mean, yes, they did change it, and they were open to listening to that kind of conversation. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so the teacher got really mad that I think one or two of the girls got this one male friend of mine or two male friends of mine that were their slaves, and had them putting on makeup, which I guess was fine. And then they had like fake boobs, like they were wearing like dresses, and then they put like fake boobs. And then I think the teacher, he went out to lunch, and he comes back, and he was so mad. He was like, take that off right now. Like, stop that, and it was like, it went too far, because it was like, he was thinking about like, people might be sensitive about like puberty and like sensitive about like gender related things. And then to see like guys being like dressed up like as like girls, and it's not like they were making them look beautiful and pretty. They were kind of like, the makeup was all over the place, and like, it wasn't like they were like it was kind of like in a way to like humiliate them, and you could tell they weren't like happy, but they were just playing along. But the teacher was like, that's too far, and like, I didn't really think of it, but I was like, I'm glad I'm not them. But it was kind of like those girls were trying to like bully and be like humiliating those guys. So, and it had a lot of other layers to it as well. So I'm glad the teacher put a stop to it. But it's like, that whole socialization thing, those guys weren't, socialized to wear dresses and makeup and pad their bras and things, like, or wear bras in general. They weren't. And I feel like those girls were doing that to them to kind of make them feel humiliated. And I mean, like, I was probably like this was like 7th or 8th grade. It wasn't the school only went up to 10th grade, so it was definitely before 10th grade. I think it was 7th or 8th because of the people I'm thinking about that were there. I don't think they were there during the high school year, so I think it was 7th or 8th grade. But it's hard to tell because I had the same teachers for like the 4-year period. 7, 8, 9, 10. We kind of had the same upper grade teachers. I did finish high school. I had to go somewhere else though. But yeah. Shout out to Adventist Junior Academies, guys. So it says, so how it ties into social stressors, and expectations of society and peers and people that you can date. So, this is something that's kind of interesting because, how a person's intimacy levels are and how their gender presentation is, say, like with a partner or with your close friends or with your family or whatever it may be. But let's just talk about like partner relationships or like intimate relationships that are more than just like your friends. So if you're like dating or crushing or fondling, or you have a partner of some form, this can get to be a little bit of a tricky situation, because it can create a lot of stressors for people, because there's those societal norms that are definitely placed on us, and we're socialized in certain ways to think certain ways about ourselves and present certain ways and to try to be our authentic selves. And there's a way that everyone kind of feels authentic. Like, you can feel it. It doesn't mean that you act on it all the time, because it might not always feel safe. So like, a lot of us have things that we don't act on because we don't feel safe about it. So we just don't do it, or we do it even though we don't feel safe, and then it can still be a stressor. Either way, it can be stressful. Like, it can be stressful to do it. It can be stressful to not do it. Whether that's the clothes you wear or whatever, or how you present with your partner and things like that. And say, like, even if you're in the bedroom and you're having sex with people, and I've talked about this in the heteronormative standards, like, it can come up a lot, when you're in a relationship with somebody, or even just hooking up with somebody. Like, kind of with stressors and expectations, and like I've mentioned before, like, I have peers who ask me things about like gender related things or intimacy related things that are just like, I know that they're kind of assuming something about me, or they're thinking because, oh, you were born female, you think like this, or because you date people that aren't really cisgender hetero guys, that you might think some other way about like this. But it's like, I feel like people aren't going to get a good picture for what I actually do think or believe, or how I actually do act, if they don't really talk to me about the details. I don't think it's that obvious. I really don't think it's that obvious. And the reason why I say that is because when I date people, I noticed that a lot of times people might have certain expectations of me that I didn't know that they had, that I didn't know that that's what was going on in their mind, that they were expecting certain things to be happening or to occur, that I was like, I had no idea that this was even something that you thought, or that they thought that, was something that I was kind of like rigid about or something. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, a big one is definitely that a lot of people assume that I have strap-ons, and that that's exclusively something that I'm just strapping them all. Like, a lot of people assume that, and I'm just like, I don't know where that assumption came from. But that assumption is out there, and I've come across people that are just kind of like, confused. Like, it confuses people sometimes, that they're just like, oh, like, you're not gonna like pull out a strap, and it's like, dude, like, well, you think I like carry things around with me or something? Like, I didn't like Uber out here with it, like, like like, if I'm not coming like straight from my house and I was already out and I'm just like coming home with somebody, I'm not just gonna have like a strap on with me or whatever. Like, some people wear them, some people bring it with them, some people have it on them, whatever. Like, cool, you do you. Some people wear them. It's cool. You do what makes you happy, but I mean, I am not one of those people. If somebody's reaching in my pants, you're not gonna find anything that there's no phallic things in there. So I don't really know what else to tell you, but yeah, that's, I don't know where that expectation comes from. I don't know where people get, like, I've never heard of that being like a thing that people should like assume, but I guess people assume it because I don't wear dresses. that I just strapping them all. So I don't really know, but that's something common that I get from people, or people expecting that I prefer certain things that I maybe don't prefer. Just because I'm like female, people might assume certain stuff about me. So it's kind of like, I get that a lot from people, that people assume, or they have like expectations, and that can be a little awkward. Like usually I don't get like super stressed about it, but it can be a little confusing when it's like somebody else is confused, and then it's like, now I'm confused because I don't really understand exactly why they're confused, because I know myself. So now I'm like trying to like navigate this other person's mind, and if they're not like very clear about what it is that they're trying to express or explain or ask about, I can't guess. Like I can't guess. But I mean, there's more. I mean, you can do far more than just strap people. That's not like the only thing that exists. And I mean, people do kind of say, I kind of have heard this, but I don't really know. I mean, I'm not like out there like sleeping with the whole free world, but I mean, you know, like I have heard people say that, you know, women that are coming out of heterosexual environments with males, who have almost exclusively dated men, cis men, that they prefer oral. I don't know how true that is. Or the other way around, that lesbians prefer, you know, penetration because they haven't all not been with men. But I mean, like, people say that. I don't know how true that is. I mean, I think that there's a combination of things that goes on, but everybody is their own person and their own individual, and people just kind of like what they like or don't like what they don't like. Touch Me Not studs exist. Pillow princesses exist. In some settings, depending, I mean, there can be tops, bottoms, switches, whatever you want to call it, versatile people, whatever. But I don't really know. Like, some things are kind of stereotypes too, so it's kind of hard to really know sometimes. Like I only know about my own experiences. I can't really generalize, but I do know that I do get a lot of expectations placed on me. It's not so awkward when it's from peers. I mean, I think once people know me, they kind of just get that, like, I just don't fall easily into some neat little boxes, and they just kind of get it, and they're like, oh, I just learned not to be surprised with different things that you like or don't like, and then, like, they just kind of get it. But I feel like there's a lot of, I think it's different when it's, like, a dating situation, because, like, also, it's, like, how do you present yourself online, too, right? So, like, my dating profiles are never like, I mean, I'm never really wearing dresses. I think I'm pretty honest about what I say or do. I don't know if I have very many updated pictures on there. I think I took like one picture during COVID, like at the beginning of COVID, and I probably got a lot of grayer hair now than I did then. So, I mean, it's probably time to update the pics. My profile picture is a little different. I think I had a relaxer in my hair then. So my hair looked a little straighter, a little longer. It's now like, it's pretty natural, and it's got the way I would describe my hair is, it's got waves. It's a wavy, coily hair with a curl every now and then. So it's not straight. And my hair is just about as straight as I am. Like, it's not fucking straight, like, at all. It's all just like every which way. Like, it just does what it does, and I just try to tame it. And just like, okay, this is as good as it's gonna get for today. Let's just, just stay put, just stay there, and I won't mess with you. Just stay there. So yeah, I think I think yeah, I'm trying to think, are there more kind of like bedroom related kind of surprises? I think it really just takes a lot of conversation. I think people in queer relationships understand this a lot. I think the most confusion I get are from people who are like new to the queerness, or have never been with somebody who's my gender, or have never have been in the straight world for such a long time that they just assume, okay, you're female and you play sports, so you're gonna, act like a guy. Like, I think that's kind of the vibe I get from a lot of people, which it's like, dude, you have no idea sometimes, like, seriously. But yeah, I get it, why people would, we all assume things about people, right? So, I kind of get it, but I do think it confuses people a lot, and I get confused by it too. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know, like, what just happened. Like, it gets confusing for me. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if we're arguing or if we're okay, or, but, yeah, I think, I don't know if it's really a stressor. I feel like for me, it's a stressor when it comes up. Like, when somebody mentions something weird and it's like at a weird timing, it's like, okay, now we have to discuss this now. And I was not trying to have a whole discussion. I just wanted to do this other thing. Like, I'm not trying to discuss right now. But it's like, sometimes you kind of just have to. You can't just like start doing stuff. So I don't really know. I don't really know. It's just, it can be a lot to navigate, guys. I'm just telling you. If you're the baby gays out there, there's a lot that you'll see. So you'll see. That's all I can really say. There's a lot out there that I don't even know if I can even touch on everything, because there's just so much that, like, I'm trying to think of, like, even scenarios or, like, situations, and I do think there are a lot of situations where, the biggest thing that comes up are people assuming things. That's usually the biggest thing. People having assumptions about things that I didn't assume they were gonna assume. Sometimes it's challenging for me to kind of know what it is that somebody else doesn't really know. And I've never really been in a sexual situation where there was like zero discussion. I've never been in like a sexual situation where it's like, oh, we never ever talked, and so I had like no idea like what was going on. Like, I've never been in a situation like that where it's like we really didn't, like, there was so much of a surprise on some end that it was just like I don't know where to go from here. It's never been like that. But I try not to go in too much detail, but I kind of write about this stuff a little bit, but it's kind of like not in a humorous way that's like to laugh at people, but it's kind of like, yeah, if any of you guys have come across any of my things that I write, it's the rating is you should probably be 18 or older, in all honesty. But yeah, I've written stuff about, like, not really like personal experiences, but about like gender related topics of like maybe like trans people or non-binary people kind of like figuring things out like with their hookup or something, and then like there's kind of like this navigating conversation that kind of needs to happen. Like, say for example, if somebody presents, somebody can easily be just like, somebody can be somebody can be a trans guy, trans male, I mean, you gotta know what they like, right? Like, I know a lot of trans males that don't really like their chest area being touched. That's not uncommon that people don't want that. I know a lot of trans males that don't like penetration. That's not uncommon. I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying, like, that's not uncommon. I know a lot of trans males that you might not know are trans males. And so, you know, that can be a little bit, like, for me, I don't mind. So, you know, if I don't find out until the clothes are coming off, then, I mean, that's just how it is, you know. But I'm not, like, upset by that at all. But some people might be. I'm not that person. I don't really care what's under your clothes, in all honesty. As long as you like it, I'm happy for you. So, yeah. But I've written about things like that where it's like, yeah, if you can't really, like, really notice somebody's gender right away, like, in quotes, like, passing, I don't know if I really like that term, but I mean, sometimes it's not, like, obvious someone's gender identity, someone's gender presentation is not obvious. I've never really had somebody think that I was a guy, like, up to a point where, like, we're hooking up and then they're just like, oh, I didn't know that was what was under your clothes. Like, I've never had that situation before, but I know people who have, and from what I've heard from those situations, it's awkward. I've had that come up more in the bathroom, in all honesty, or like in changing rooms where people are just like, oh, like, I didn't know you were, like, not a man. It's like, well, why the fuck would I be over here if I was a man? But whatever. But yeah, I've never really had that situation, but I've kind of written about more like gender inclusive related kind of topics where it's like those kind of scenarios can come up where it's like, you know, it's a different space to kind of navigate, because hetero cis people don't really have these conversations with each other. I don't think when they're hooking up, they're not really just like, oh, like, what are your gender expression, like, preferences and, like, names for, like, genitalia and stuff, and, like, all, like, they don't talk about that stuff, man. They just ignore it and just go for it. And it might not be an issue with them. But I don't know, man. I just think it's very, I don't know. It's just, there's not a lot of content out there that people can kind of find or relate to. There's not a lot of scenarios out there that people can really challenge themselves with if you're not out there yourself having these experiences. I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to go out and have all kinds of gender queer experiences just for your own educational life. Like, like, if that's not what you're into, it's not what you're into. But I quite don't mind. But yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, I think that there really are a lot of expectations of things that are placed on people, and, you know, I get them from people all the time, so I'm certain that other people get them too from others. And that's why it gets hard, you know, if I have like friends, or, you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not like sharing all the like intimate details of every single thing that happens. Like, if I'm like with somebody and they're a partner, or we're dating, or it's just a crush, or like we hook up or something, I'm not just like, oh, let me tell my friend what happened in all this scenario. Like, I don't really reveal all that stuff, but it's just kind of like, it can be a little bit stressful too when it's like, I mean, like, my straight friends don't understand this shit. Like, I can't just be like, oh, like, yeah, like, this happened the other night, and they'd be like, wait, what the fuck? Like, you know, it's like, it doesn't happen in their world. But in my world, there's a lot of different types of diverse experiences that come up that there's no manual for that. You know, our sex ed class never taught us about that. You know, it didn't ever come up. And so it's kind of interesting when it's like there's all these other spaces that a lot of us kind of navigate by ourselves. We're just like floating around, just like, what the fuck are we doing? But it's not that uncommon, just to let you guys know. It's not that uncommon. I just think people don't talk about it. But the more you hang out with people that are kind of like not fully like on the binary parts of the spectrum with their gender, and the more LGBT types of people you hang out with, the more diverse of groups of people you hang out with, you start hearing people's experiences and stories and realizing that there's so many diverse experiences out there that people go through that it's hard to really just put things in the boxes and just to like assume. Like I was talking to one of my friends, my cis straight friends, about this. I was like, well, when I go out and I date people, there's like so much conversation around like, sometimes around like gender expression and things like that, and like and gender identity and things like that. And she's like, well, I talked to my gay male friend and he didn't tell me that. And she's like, well, maybe it's different for women. And I'm like, no, maybe it's different for me because I'm not a gay male, and your gay male friend who only dates gay male guys, I mean, I'm dating more than just gay females. So I mean, there's gonna be more in there than just that. So I mean, it's just tiring. But yeah, I mean, I love it. It's just having to talk about it makes it a little complicated. If it's not just like with me and the person I'm trying to talk to about these things, it gets a little complicated because it's like, I don't think everybody needs to be involved. It's kind of hard too when it's like, if I'm dating somebody and then it's like, people are always like, oh, is it a man or is it a woman, or like, who are you dating? It's like, do you really like out people and be like, oh, I'm dating this non-binary person, and they're like, oh, well, were they born male or were they born female? It's like, well, maybe this person didn't want all my friends knowing that about them. So it's like, it's this whole complex space to have to navigate. And then it's like, I mean, I've talked about it a little bit before, that I've had experiences where I've kind of like mentioned something about somebody's like sexuality or maybe their like gender, and it wasn't like a secret or anything. They weren't like, don't tell anyone. But then it got awkward when I was with the other people that I was like, we were all hanging out in a group, and then I introduced this person to some other people who were just really kind of like intrusive and weird and awkward about this person and how they were. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, this is not what we need right now. It's like, okay, like, you know that this is like a trans male friend of mine, and like, really, you're gonna ask him all these questions and then like keep talking about the pronouns and like all this kind of thing about how difficult the pronouns are for you. And it's like, really, like, we're just trying to go to like the Pride Festival. Like, do we really need this right now? You know, it's like, it's so complex. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any more when it comes to like maybe like non-binary and dating. I'd say the most diverse or most maybe non-assuming types of situations come up, I'd say really if I'm dating like a non-binary person, even though I think with everybody you really can't assume. At least for me, I've known I can't really just assume what people want, what they're interested in, what, you know, without like a conversation around it, or without like testing things out. I can't just like look at somebody and be like, I know that this is what you want, you know, or this is what you like. Like, that's not really a skill that I have. But yeah, I mean, like, I think people are usually able to kind of describe it. And I don't think I've ever come across a situation where it was like a stalemate kind of thing, where like, well, what I like and what I'm willing to do isn't what they like or what they're willing to do, so we're just gonna do nothing. I don't think I've ever come across a scenario like that where it's like, well, guess we're both at a loss. This isn't gonna happen tonight. Like, I don't think that's ever come up. There's always been something that can be agreed upon. I don't know, but yeah, I think the most diverse experiences I would say have come up with like non-binary people. You just gotta ask people what they're interested in an appropriate environment. I mean, if you're gonna fuck them, I mean, if you guys are fucking each other, you will probably talk about it, I'm gonna assume. But if you're not, then, you know, you might not need to know all those details just then. But if they say that they're open to talking about it, then, I mean, not everybody doesn't want to talk about things. But it's just, you know, you can't just go around just asking people all kinds of stuff. Because different people take things differently. And the interesting thing is, too, I think a lot of times people don't notice, like, okay, when you're being intrusive and weird towards one person, you're probably not the first person that's been intrusive and weird towards them. Like, I've had plenty of people being intrusive and weird towards me, and it's always, like, a certain population of people. It's often hetero females. Often. Cisgender hetero females. I don't get this from any of the trans people. I don't get any shit from any of the gay guys too much. But it's just like some of the gay guys I know, I kind of know why they're kind of like that, because like I said, the religious thing. So they're still challenging some ideas of their own. But yeah, and that's like a select couple people. It's not like a whole lot of people. And then yeah, the hetero females, they're the ones that are just like they'll just get it's hard for them to wrap their heads around things. And I think sometimes too, it's like hard for them to understand, especially the ones who are sleeping with hetero cis males. I think it's hard for them to understand another female's experience that isn't sleeping with hetero cis males. Like, they kind of have a hard time wrapping their head around that. I don't know if they just can't use their imaginations or if they just don't understand, but it's just, I've just noticed, like, it's like the questions are just weird to me. But I mean, it's also because to me, what's normal to me isn't normal to them. It's like we're from completely different planets. It's like, I don't know, like it's very odd. Like, yeah, there's just a lot that I'm not saying all of them. Maybe this is just the people I know, but I mean, like, I do get a lot of questions about things that are. It's fine when people ask questions. I'm just talking about, like, friends I have that ask me questions that might be, like, inappropriate questions at, like, weird times. You know, it's like if I'm at a work party, I don't really want to be talking about my latest hookup, you know, like, that's not really something that I want to be talking about. But at, like, a work thing. But yeah, I'm trying to think if I have, like, any more to say about, like, kind of like non-binary kind of situations. I mean, definitely asking people. I mean, not everybody's genitalia is like an assumption type of thing. You can't really assume what it is or what they like it to be called or what they want you to do with it. That's not really something that's, like, too obvious, I would say. So it's good to ask or get to know. If you're gonna be with somebody like that, you probably don't want to, like, ask just, like, any old person, like, oh, you're non-binary? Like, what do you like in bed? Like, that's inappropriate. But I mean, a lot of people will say that kind of stuff, though, so just beware. But it's just very, there's a lot of, it's very dynamic, I would say. Just a lot of the things that they're even heteronormative standards, and then they're even kind of like LGBT standards of things too. And I think with non-binary people, it doesn't always apply because they might not always be like LGBT people. And then also, like how they identify on different levels of things, like that can vary too. Like, no two people are exactly alike. And then definitely knowing the difference between, you know, if somebody's trans versus if they're non-binary, that's definitely important too. I mean, there are definitely other parts of the gender spectrum too, but I'm just using those words because those are the ones that you hear about more often. But there are definitely people who identify in different ways too, and just kind of knowing what they mean by it when they say that, what that means to them, kind of what they expect from you, what you should expect from them in certain scenarios and settings and things. I mean, it's best to just know from the individual and not just assume things. That's mostly what I'm here to say. Because there are a lot of expectations that definitely get placed on us. And there's a lot of pressure from society and all different levels of society when it's like, okay, like, what if you are a trans man, but then you haven't had, like, bottom surgery or top surgery or different types of things that people are like, you know, if people notice that about you, they're going to ask, they're going to be curious. Yes, it's inappropriate. It's none of their fucking business, but they're going to ask because they don't know any better and they weren't trained at home about it because people's parents don't tend to talk to them about these things, and people's schools don't tend to educate people about what's appropriate and what's not. And then they just go out in the world and they have these weird questions and they're like, oh, I didn't know that was weird because I wanted to know the answer. And I thought that, you know, they treat people like they're like an experiment or like a zoo exhibit or something. And they're like, oh, let me poke and prod at this and let me ask this, or like a show performer or something. And like, they kind of treat people like they're not really like human. And it's like, do you really want somebody asking you that question? I mean, like, nobody's asking you about like if you're having some sort of surgical procedures and like about your medical health and things like that. Like, that's none of your damn business. You know, it's almost like if you've seen Rain Man, where I don't remember Sean Penn's character, but spoiler alert, where he was just like I guess when he liked somebody, he would ask them if they're on prescription medication. And it's like, you can't, like, it's almost equivalent to asking, like, so what prescription medications are you taking? It's like, do you even know my fucking name? Like, what the hell? Like, I mean, there's a certain level of personal questions that just, like, people shouldn't be expected to answer. And it is insulting to ask. Even if you're curious, it's none of your business. Like, I can't imagine asking. I mean, I have quite a bit of cis, straight, female friends that I'm just like, I mean, they ask me a bunch of questions because I'm kind of open to talking about things. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't ever ask them about this kind of stuff. I don't care what the fuck they're doing in the bedroom with their boyfriends. It doesn't concern me. Like, I'm not interested in knowing. I'm not, like, excited to hear about it. Like, ew. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not, like, interested in it. But I do think that there is some level of curiosity sometimes that I've definitely noticed. And so I don't it can be annoying. It can be so obnoxious. Oh my God. But, you know, I mean, sometimes I take it with a grain of salt, and sometimes I'm like, you're fucking annoying. Like, I just can't help myself. But it just kind of depends on my mood. And I think a lot of people experience that it's like, well, just, you're going to get whichever side of me you're going to get. Like, sorry. Like, you know, if I feel offended, you will know. But it's just, I don't know, man. It's hard. But I write about it more. When I'm kind of in a clearer, more conscious state, where I'm kind of like, yeah, I definitely write about the gender experiences with, like, hookups and stuff like that. It's definitely a thing that isn't, it's not really something I see in too many places other than from, like, a fetish perspective. I mean, I don't hate on people who have fetishes. Like, you like your fetish, you do you. But I do think that there is a level when it comes to certain types of fetishes where it's like, it is also for a certain population of people. Like, it's written for these people, or it's geared towards entertaining a certain population of people, but it doesn't really represent the actual people. Like I was saying, like trans females, you'll see a lot of trans females in porn, and there's like a fetish behind that, but it's not exactly representative of trans females and them having sex. That's not really representative. It's a fetish version of that. Just like lesbian porn, a lot of the lesbian porn is for heterosexual cis males, and I can tell you right now that a lot of that stuff is not real. I've never heard or seen of any kind of lesbian sex that looks like that. So, I mean, while it's similar because it is women and women's bodies on other women's bodies, but it's not realistic. Like, a lot of this stuff is like, I don't think anybody, like, if I were to take some of that stuff and just use it as if it were educational material and start doing that to people, I think they would fucking not enjoy that. They'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? I don't think I could even, like, do that because it doesn't seem, like, normal. But I guess the straight guys like it. I think they think it's good. And to them, it's like a heteronormative version of lesbian sex. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it's like, what the fuck? Like, how is that even, like, a thing? But I guess there is kind of a heteronormative version of lesbian sex, which isn't realistic. I mean, not really. I mean, it's not the right thing. It doesn't match anything that people actually do. I mean, the fingering is not that. It's not what they're doing. They're usually not doing it in any way. I don't even think they would do that to themselves. Like, I'm like, how would that even work? Like, you wouldn't really get very far with that situation. Even the way they react with one another is like, you're clearly not like, it's like, it feels like they're doing it for the camera. Like, they're doing it for the camera and putting on a show. It doesn't feel like, oh, they're doing this because they're into each other. You can tell they're straight chicks fucking for money for the camera, and they're like, oh yeah, I just want to look good for the cameras and, like, turn people on. But they aren't concerned about turning each other on or pleasing each other at all. Like, you can tell by the shit that they're doing that it's like, okay, like, if you're really gonna try to do that, you're gonna be at this for, like, hours. Like, nobody's gonna get anywhere with this shit. Like, you're gonna tire yourself out. But I don't know, if that's what they want to do. But it's just very inaccurate. The weird scissoring kind of things, I don't even know, man. Like, maybe for, like, a size 0, there's certain stuff you can kind of do. But the others of us who are not a size 0, there's no way. I mean, if your cardio game's not on point, you're not doing any of that. Anything that the way that they're doing it. They look like ninjas flying through the air. Like, there's no... That's not accurate. Like, it's just... There are different scissoring positions, too. And the ones that they use in lesbian porn, there's always, like, the one that just looks like 2 open scissor legs. Like, just... That's not always, like, a way that people do it. Like, there's other ways. Like, that's not the only one. And I don't know that many people who do it exactly like that. Scissoring, trimming, whatever you call it. There's a lot of stuff that they don't do. I don't know if I've seen a lot of lesbian porn, like the straight lesbian porn. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know if I've seen a lot of straight lesbian porn where they kind of know about oral. I'm not sure I don't know if I've come across it, but I mean, they're missing out if they're not doing it. I mean, it would make sense if they're not into each other that they wouldn't be doing that. But I mean, people don't have to do it, but I'm just saying, like, it's pretty common that people do. I mean, if you're really a lesbian, that is something that probably is going to come up in conversation at least once in your life if you're sleeping with multiple people. But I don't know. It's weird. It's just a strange world out there, guys. But yeah, so that's already weird that there's kind of like a hetero version or like hetero fetish versions of gay stuff or LGBT stuff or non-binary or trans stuff. You don't really see a lot of non-binary stuff out there. And if you do, it's kind of like, it's a little awkward and all. It's kind of weird. The most I've probably seen is kind of like the fetishized, like, Asian tomboy ladies, that kind of have, like, a boyish look to them. But I think, again, that's geared towards, you know, cis hetero men that like kind of that twink look. But that's kind of the main one that I've noticed. But it's still not non-binary people necessarily, like, doing what they want with the people they want to do it with. Like, it's kind of like for the camera kind of stuff too. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I think I tired myself out, guys. I've been talking for like 3 hours. Like more than 3 hours at this point. So thanks for hanging in there. I hope this isn't disturbing for people. I got a lot of notes here that I gotta get through. I'm like, they're building up. I write them on the back of my business cards, and I've just got all these gay notes just like all over my desk and stuff and in the car. Like, I need to, like, you know, record and then get rid of it. I didn't get a chance yet to talk about like different topics like lesbian bed death and like gold stars and things like that. Like, that's kind of another topic that's kind of on my mind a little bit when it comes to like more of the heteronormative type stuff and just like labels being placed on people, and that kind of thing. So I might record more tomorrow, but I'm gonna be busy tomorrow too, so I don't really know. But anyways, guys, I think that's all I really have time to really say because I'm tired. I'm gonna go grab a quick dinner and then chill for the night. But anyways, hopefully this was informative, and I hope it wasn't too confusing because I know I'm pretty vague with some stuff. I don't really like to go into too much personal details. Like, I don't want my mom on here. Hi, Mom, if you're listening. Oh my God, don't. But if you are, I mean, I don't really want my parents listening to these topics. So I kind of worry. I mean, if my parents make it this far through these episodes, I mean, damn. I don't even know what to say. Like, I don't think I could sit and listen to them talking about this kind of stuff. And I'm not even really being explicit. I don't feel like I'm really being explicit, but the family I was raised in, this is like practically porn the way I'm talking. Like, they're pretty reserved people. So I'm not going to apologize for anything really, but I mean, still, it's like, you know, I don't need to really be, I feel like I'm open enough to my own comfort level. I don't think I need to be like more explicit about things. If you got questions, I'll answer individual questions, but otherwise I can't really post because, again, like age ranges and stuff. I'm not trying to get like kicked off the internet or anything for like exposing people to like, you know, adult content underage or whatever. Like, that's not fucking my, you know, my interest. You know, if you're 18 or older, I hope you're on here. If you're younger, I mean, I hope that you know when you're not supposed to be listening to these things or ask your parents or whatever. But, you know, I get it. We were all younger too. I know how I was when I was younger, so I'm not even gonna talk. But yeah. Anyways, I'm tired, so I'm gonna log off. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time.